Admiral Thorne stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing into the empty stretch of space ahead, his 4 eyes focused on the tactical display before him. 12 stone-borne heavy cruisers, each the size of a floating fortress, formed a perfect circle. Every ship was built for war, armed with enough firepower to erase a small moon. They had been waiting in this sector for 3 long days. "Admiral, the target should arrive soon," said his second-in-command, Officer Krell, the younger Stoneborn's. Scales gleamed a bright green in a sign of excitement. This would be his first encounter with humans. Thorne's own scales had darkened to a deep blue, the color of confidence and command. He had spent more than 40 years in battle, conquered 17 alien civilizations, and brought their worlds under the Stoneborn dominion. Now the humans would be number 18. "Remind me about these humans again," Thorne said, though he already knew. He wanted his crew to hear it. Krell tapped the console, and the human intelligence files appeared on the central display. "They are a young species," he began, "from a small planet called Earth. Soft-skinned, no natural armor, only 2 eyes. Their bones are fragile and they are ruled by emotion. When under pressure, they panic." The bridge crew hissed with amusement. The idea of such weak creatures challenging the might of the Stoneborn was absurd. "Their vessel is called the UES Meridian Dawn," Krell continued. "A civilian cargo ship carrying terraforming supplies to one of their colonies. Light shields, no weapons, 23 crew members, all human." Thorne nodded slowly. "And how many times have humans surrendered when facing our forces?" "Every single time, Admiral. In our last 5 encounters, they begged for mercy the moment they saw our ships." That was true. The Stoneborn military had perfected a strategy that crushed entire civilizations, without firing a single shot. They would first appear in overwhelming numbers, surround the target, then broadcast their past victories, showing burning cities, broken fleets, and alien leaders kneeling in defeat. Fear did the rest. It had never failed. To the Stoneborn, surrender proved superiority, proof that they were destined to rule the galaxy. "Admiral, we have contact," the sensor officer called out. "One ship dropping out of hyperspace, right on schedule." Space rippled and twisted. A moment later, the Meridian Dawn appeared. A small, boxy vessel painted white with blue markings that read, UES Meridian Dawn in human script. Thorne's lips pulled back, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Begin encirclement protocol. I want them to see the full strength of our fleet before we speak." The 12 Stoneborn cruisers moved into position, their black armored hulls gleaming with weapon ports. The human ship sat trapped in the middle, a tiny fish surrounded by 12 hungry sharks. "Open a channel," Thorne ordered. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing a human female with brown skin and short black hair. Her expression was calm, unnervingly calm. Most species showed fear by now. "This is Captain Elena Vance of the UES Meridian Dawn," she said. "State your business." "I am Admiral Thorne of the Stoneborn Dominion," he replied. "You are surrounded by 12 warships. Your shields cannot protect you, and your weapons cannot harm us. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Captain Vance looked off-screen, then back at him. "I see your ships, Admiral. Impressive fleet, but I'm afraid we can't comply with your demands." Thorne's scales darkened in anger. "You have no choice. Watch what happens to those who resist." He signaled his communications officer, who began playing the Stoneborn's infamous victory recordings. Burning cities, collapsing fleets, alien rulers kneeling before Stoneborn generals. "The Rillan Empire fought us with 1,000 ships," Thorne boasted. "We destroyed them in 6 hours. The Morgasi, collective hid in their asteroid fortresses. We cracked them open like eggs. The Vidian Republic thought their quantum shields would save them. They were wrong." The screen filled with destruction. Worlds conquered. Civilizations crushed, billions enslaved. When the broadcast ended, Vance remained silent for a moment. Then she smiled faintly. "Very impressive, Admiral," she said. "You've conquered many worlds. But I noticed something interesting about all those victories." Thorne narrowed his eyes. "And what is that?" "None of them were human." The comment hit harder than a missile. Thorne blinked, momentarily thrown off. He had expected begging, crying, not amusement. "You are 23 weak beings on a cargo ship," he growled. "We are 4,000 soldiers on 12 warships. How could you possibly resist?" Captain Vance leaned forward, her voice calm and cold. "Admiral, you seem to know a lot about other species. but not much about humans. Let me teach you something. She pressed a button. Instantly, alarms blared across every stone-born cruiser. Admiral, shouted the sensor officer. They're broadcasting a signal, some kind of beacon. It looks like a distress call. Thorn chuckled. They're calling for help. There are no human ships within 50 light years. By the time a rescue arrives, this will be finished. The smile on Captain Vance's face did not fade. You're right. No human ships will arrive in time, she said. But that signal wasn't a distress call. Thorn's amusement hardened into a sneer. Then what was it? A combat report, her voice was flat. We just uploaded our sensor logs, tactical analysis, and a formal declaration of engagement to the Human Defense Network. Every ship, station, and colony in range now knows your coordinates, your movements, and what you did at Kepler 442b. Cold ran through Thorn. Kepler 442b, a tiny farming colony he'd burned 2 months earlier to send a message. He had expected fear, not this calm. You still plan to die here? He barked, forcing confidence into his words. Maybe we do, Vance admitted. But you made a mistake. You studied our surrender records and ignored our war records. Humans have fought each other for millennia. We know how to fight and when to. She leaned closer to the camera. Admiral, you just gave us a reason to fight. The transmission cut. For the first time in decades, Thorn felt something unfamiliar on his bridge, uncertainty. Inside the Meridian Dawn, Elena Vance sat tall in the command chair and watched 12 alien warships ripple. On her main display, every stone-born cruiser bristled with weapons capable of vaporizing her hull in seconds. Her crew, 23 humans, were at their stations, faces taut but steady. Captain, they're hailing us again, Lieutenant Chen reported. Put them through, Elena said. Thorn's face filled the screen. His forehead pulsed red with anger. Stone-born body language she'd learned to read over months of encounters. Human captain, he snarled, you have wasted my time. Surrender now, or I will obliterate your ship and everyone aboard. Elena's eyes scanned the bridge. Murphy at weapons. Patel at sensors, all ready. No one flinched. I have a counter-proposal, she said calmly. You and your fleet will leave this system now. You have 30 seconds to begin your retreat. The Admiral's laughter was venomous. You cannot be serious. One small transport against 12 heavy cruisers? Your vessel has no weapons, weak shields. A simple hull. We could destroy you without effort. 25 seconds, Admiral. Elena's voice did not waver. Thorn's scales deepened to a furious red. He barked a history. Conquests, burned worlds, fleets crushed. The tactical display behind him magnified the disparity. One tiny dot encircled by massive symbols representing his cruisers. Our armor is meters thick. Our guns can level cities. You are insects, he said. Tell me, what could one human cargo ship possibly do? 15 seconds, Elena said. Thorn leaned forward. I leveled Kepler 442b. 50,000 died. I kept survivors alive so they could watch their world burn. A muscle moved in Elena's jaw. Kepler 442b had been home to farmers and children, names her crew carried in their memories. The bridge tightened. 5 seconds, she intoned. Then die, Thorn snarled, certain of victory. Time's up. Elena's hand dropped to the console and pressed a single button. Light snapped from steady white to harsh red. Klaxons screamed through the human. Ship as status lines, scrolled across every monitor. Hull reconfiguration, weapon systems online, combat mode engaged. On the stone-born bridge, sensor officers cried out. What is happening to their ship? The Meridian Dawn was changing. Panels along its outer hull began to unfasten and slide away. What had looked like a humble cargo superstructure split and folded, revealing armored segments beneath. Hidden hatches opened, and weapon ports thrust free like mechanical pedals. Reinforcement plates extended with a grinding roar. Auxiliary thrusters unfolded. Energy signatures spiked, precisely. The kind of power release a dozen cruisers should have noticed hours ago. Admiral, the sensor officer shouted. Massive energy emissions. Weapon deployment. Elena rose from her chair and spoke with a new name and authority that filled the channel. I am Captain Elena Vance of the United Earth ship Retribution. We are not a cargo vessel. Across the stone-born fleet, alarms cascaded as their scanners re-evaluated the human ship's profile. The tiny dot at their center suddenly held a different truth. Not a prey, but a coiled predator, stripped of its camouflage and primed to strike. The Meridian Dawn, the so-called unarmed transport, completed its transformation, metal and light revealing the silhouette of a warship at once familiar and terrifying. Weapon emplacement slid into firing arcs, and the human crew snapped into practiced combat, positions they had drilled for years. Thorn's victory grin faltered. The bridge hummed with a sound he had not heard when ordering worlds. Crushed, the quiet, focused readiness of beings who had chosen to fight. The moment before battle had arrived. The white and blue paint peeled away like a discarded cloak, revealing the dark, angular silhouette beneath. The little cargo ship folded outward and became something else entirely. A sleek predator bristling with arms and plating. Impossible, Thorn breathed. Elena continued, calm as ever. My ship has been tracking your fleet for 2 months. We predicted you'd ambush the next human vessel in this sector, so we gave you exactly what you expected to find. Where the Meridian Dawn had floated a moment before, now hung the UES Retribution, smaller than any single stone-born cruiser, but far deadlier in form and intent. You made a mistake when you told me about Kepler 442b, Elena said. Those 50,000 you murdered, they weren't soldiers. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, children. They never threatened you, but when you kill their families, you do not only make victims, you make enemies. On the Stoneborn Bridge, confusion spread like a virus. Officers barked for recalibration as their sensors tried and failed to interpret the new signatures. Targeting systems that had locked onto an unarmed transport now had to relearn a warship's profile, and relearning would cost them time. The signal you heard was not a distress call, Elena continued. It was a declaration of combat. Every human ship, station, and colony nearby now knows what you did at Kepler 442b and where you are. You've spent your life conquering species that chose not to fight. Today you face one that does. She looked straight into the camera. You taught us to fear you. You made us decide to stop being afraid. Lieutenant Murphy, fire when ready, she ordered. Murphy's hands danced over the controls. Captain, weapons armed and locked. Primary target, your flagship? Not yet. Elena's voice was ice. Start with the ship on our starboard side. I want Admiral Thorn to witness what happens to his fleet before we deal with him. Thorn raged orders, but his fleet stuttered, hesitated, their crews still recalibrating. That delay was the line of fate. You are outnumbered 12-1, Thorn bellowed. Even if you have weapons now, you cannot defeat my fleet. Elena allowed herself the barest, cold smile. You're right. This isn't a fair fight. She paused, then added, Not for you. The Retribution's first shot was unlike anything the Stoneborn had ever seen. A concentrated beam of energy, bright as a miniature sun, lanced across the void and struck. Stoneborn Cruiser 1. The enemy ship's shields flared and vanished. The beam cut through armor and mass alike, shearing the cruiser in two. For a beat that felt like the end of the galaxy, Thorn watched one of his greatest warships simply cease to exist. The two severed halves drifted apart, atmosphere and debris spilling into space. There had been no time for escape. Return fire, Thorn screamed. 11 cruisers opened up, sending a torrent of energy. Bolts and missiles, firepower. That could have demolished a moon. The volley raced toward the Retribution. Defensive systems online, Elena called, composed. A shimmering field snapped into being around the human ship. The Stoneborn volleys struck the barrier and were absorbed of their power. Swallowed by a defensive matrix the aliens could not understand. The Retribution emerged unscathed. How is that possible? Thorn demanded, voice thin with panic. Unknown, his science officer replied. Their screen is absorbing and redirecting energy. Our weapons are ineffective. Murphy was already readying the next strike. Captain, next target locked. Same weapon? No. Elena's eyes were hard. Use kinetic. Railgun, maximum charge. A long armored aperture opened along the ship's flank. Electromagnetic coils along the railgun glowed and hummed. At the muzzle sat a solid projectile the size of a telephone pole. Without flare or visible beam, the railgun fired. The slug accelerated toward the Stoneborn Cruiser 2 at a fraction of light speed. The enemy sensors barely registered it before impact. The kinetic round punched through armor, detonating with a force equal to a nuclear blast. The cruiser split, its core rupturing in a catastrophic cascade. Fire and metal blew outward in a blossoming ruin. 2 cruisers down, 10 left. 2 down, 10 to go, Murphy reported. Thorne barked orders, his voice cracking through the chaos. But his crews were no longer disciplined soldiers. They were panicking. 2 of their strongest cruisers had been annihilated in under a minute. Their weapons had done nothing. "Admiral, we should retreat," urged his second-in-command. "That human ship wields technology beyond anything we've seen. We need to report back to command." "No," Thorne roared. "We still outnumber them 10 to 1. Focus every gun on a single point. Overload their defenses." The remaining Stoneborn cruisers tightened formation, concentrating their combined firepower on the Retribution's forward shields. The void lit up like a miniature star as torrents of energy smashed against the human ship enough to melt continents. But the Retribution's barrier held. "Captain," said Patel from the sensor station, eyes wide, "their concentrated attack is actually overcharging our defensive grid. We're at 120% power." "Excellent," Elena replied calmly. "Lieutenant Murphy, load nanite warheads." Murphy's fingers flew across his console. Nanite missiles armed, targeting the forward line of 3 ships. "Fire." 3 tiny projectiles, launched from the Retribution, each larger than a coffee cup. The Stoneborn point defense cannons opened fire, but the missiles twisted and darted like living things. They struck home, small sparks against massive hulls, and vanished. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then chaos. Microscopic machines, smaller than dust, spread through the alien. Ships devouring metal, hijacking circuits, rewriting control systems. The infected cruisers turned their guns not on the humans, but on their own fleet. "What is happening?" Thorne screamed as Stoneborn ships began firing on one another. "Your ships are being rewritten," Elena said evenly over the open channel. "The nanites have convinced their targeting systems that your own vessels are the enemy. They'll keep firing until one side is gone." One infected cruiser unleashed a missile barrage at Thorne's flagship. His shields barely held, flaring and cracking under the impact. "This is impossible," he snarled. "No civilization has weapons like these." "You're right," Elena said coldly. "No other civilization does. But you've never fought humans before. We don't build weapons to win battles. We build them to end wars." Within minutes, the 3 infected cruisers had reduced 2 more of their allies to debris before being destroyed themselves. "Status report," Thorne demanded. 7 ships lost, Admiral, his officer replied. "Only 5 remain, including the flagship. 7 gone. More than half his fleet destroyed in under 10 minutes. By a single human ship that still hadn't taken damage. This was supposed to have been an effortless slaughter. "Admiral, please," his second-in-command begged. "We must retreat. Let headquarters send a full armada." But Thorne's pride burned hotter than reason. His entire career, his empire's myth of superiority, balanced on this moment. "All ships," he shouted, "prepare for ramming speed. If we cannot destroy them with weapons, we'll crush them with our hulls." The 5 remaining cruisers surged forward, their engines flaring white-hot. They were massive, each hundreds of meters long, a tidal wave of steel and fury. Even if their weapons failed, their sheer mass could obliterate anything in their path. Elena watched the incoming formation with quiet fascination. "A ramming attack," she murmured. "How primitive." "Commander Singh," she ordered, "deploy gravity mines." "Aye, Captain." Tiny spheres no bigger than marbles launched from the Retribution and spread out in space. A moment later they activated, and space itself screamed. Each mine generated an artificial gravity well strong enough to tear a moon apart. The Stoneborn cruisers were caught mid-charge, their hulls bending, stretching, twisting under impossible forces. Metal shrieked as ships warped like clay. 3 cruisers were ripped apart instantly, torn to pieces by conflicting gravitational pulls. The 4th pushed through, barely, only to collide with the Retribution's shields. It folded like foil against a wall. The human ship didn't even flinch. Only Thorne's flagship survived, its armor and reinforced structure saving it from total annihilation. But it was a dead man's ship, engines failing, weapons offline, life support barely functional. "Admiral," said his second-in-command quietly, "we've lost everything. Engines are down, weapons offline, life support at 20%. We must surrender." Thorne stared at the Retribution, hanging silent and unharmed in the void. In 15 minutes, 12 of the Stoneborn Empire's most powerful warships had been reduced to wreckage. "How?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "How did they do this?" He sank into his command chair as the flagship's lights flickered and died, surrounded by the drifting remains of his once invincible fleet. The flagship's hull was broken, drifting uselessly through black space, while the human warship hung nearby like a patient predator. Thorn stared at the ruins of his fleet, 12 heavy cruisers, the pride of the stone-born navy, reduced to smoking wreckage in less than 20 minutes. Admiral, incoming transmission from the human ship, the communications officer stammered. The young stone-born scales had gone pale. Shock and fear showed in every line of his face. "Put it through," Thorn said, his voice small. Captain Elena Vance filled the damaged screen. Behind her, the human bridge crew worked with the same calm efficiency they'd shown through the battle. There had been no ecstatic celebration after their slaughter. They looked almost clinical in victory, and that made them more frightening than fury ever could. "I believe you wanted to know how we defeated your fleet," she said. Thorn said nothing. His pride had been carved away along with his ships. "You studied our surrender records and decided we were cowards," Elena continued. "You watched that we show emotion and assumed emotion equals weakness. You noted soft skin and brittle bones and concluded we could not fight. Every assumption was wrong." She rose, moving to the front of her bridge as if addressing an audience of one. "Humans have spent 10,000 years learning to kill each other with rocks and spears and bare hands. We fought before we mastered fire. We perfected murder before we invented the wheel. That history of violence did not disappear when we went to the stars. We carried it with us. Every weapon you witnessed today was born from millennia of humans, trying to find smarter, deadlier ways to end conflicts." On Thorn's tactical display, the debris field of his fleet glowed coldly. Splintered armor, frozen hulls, drifting corpses. The sight finally sank in. "You noticed our plasma lances," Elena said. "Those were not off-the-shelf designs. We analyzed your energy signatures and built a countermeasure. It took our labs 3 weeks. Our rail technologies are old. We just pushed them to speeds your ship's sensors weren't calibrated to detect. The projectile that severed your cruiser was moving at 97% of light." Thorn thought of the nanite strike. "And the nanites," he rasped. "Originally medical tech," Elena replied. "We weaponized them. They can rewrite code, consume materials, and replicate using enemy resources. 1 nanite becomes 1 billion in under an hour. The gravity mines were born from our study of black holes and dense stars. We learned to create artificial gravity wells and to shape them into weapons." A slow comprehension crept across Thorn's face. The scale of his mistake unfolded before him. "You didn't fight us by accident," Elena said softly. "You prepared to fight us specifically, and we prepared for everyone. When humanity expanded, we learned that the galaxy is full of species like yours who conquer and enslave. We decided not to be victims." There was a hard edge to her voice now. "Those humans who surrendered to you, many of them volunteered. They knew the odds. They went captive to study you, your weapons, your tactics, your psychology. And they transmitted everything before they died." Thorn remembered the faces of prisoners he'd interrogated. What he'd taken for terror had been calculation, survival strategy. His arrogance had become a weapon used against him. "You used our methods against us," Thorn said, voice broken. "We used your arrogance," Elena corrected. "You judged surrender as cowardice. You never imagined surrender could be a tactic. You believed emotion meant weakness and missed how we could weaponize it." She returned to her chair and leaned forward. "Admiral, your species built an empire by terrifying others into submission. You succeeded because you faced peoples who feared death. Today you faced a people who choose death over enslavement." Thorn looked around at his ruined bridge. His officers' eyes begged for orders that would never matter. His career lay in tatters. His fleet was ash. He swallowed and asked, "What happens now?" Elena's face was unreadable. "Now you make a choice." She enumerated the options with surgical clarity. "Option 1, I finish the job. I wipe your flagship from the stars and eliminate the last witnesses. Your government will eventually notice a missing fleet. They may never know what happened. Your name dies with your ship." Thorn waited for the other alternative. "Option 2, Elena continued, I let your ship and surviving crew live. You will return to your people and tell them the truth. Tell them you were defeated by humans. Tell them we are prepared, that we build weapons not just to win fights but to end wars. You will carry a warning. Attack humanity, And there will be no safe harbor to which you can retreat. She paused so the words could settle like cold water. You will also deliver one demand, she added. Withdraw your forces from contested human space. Withdraw all occupation forces from our colonies. Stop enslaving worlds. Accept a peace treaty governed by a neutral council. Or face annihilation. Silence followed. On Thorn's bridge, consoles sputtered and life support hummed like a distant heartbeat. The last of his pride clung to him like armor, thin and scorched. How can I trust you? He asked at last. You will not have to trust us, Elena said. You will have the evidence. Sensors logged everything. You fought, you lost. You will speak the truth. Thorn looked at the drifting wreckage, at the faces of officers who still awaited orders. His hand trembled, the weight of an empire pressing down like gravity. Very well, he said finally, voice hollow. We will withdraw. Elena nodded once. You will leave now. We will not pursue you beyond your borders. Not unless you break the treaty. Go back and tell your people what you saw. The channel closed. Thorn watched the human warship, sleek, silent, unmarked by the battle's fury, glide away into the black toward a small band of stars. In the quiet that followed, he realized the galaxy had shifted indelibly beneath his feet. What had once been certain was no longer so. Somewhere new calculations would be made, new alliances would form. The stone-born dominion would have to choose. Adapt or be broken by a species it had once dismissed as prey. Repair the engines and return to stone-born space, Elena had said. Report exactly what happened. Tell your leaders that the humans they thought were weak and emotional just destroyed an entire stone-born battle fleet without suffering a single casualty. Thorn stared at her on the screen. Why would you let me go, he rasped. Because, Admiral, Elena replied. You will carry a message for us. And that message is deadlier to your people than any weapon I could build. She leaned closer to the camera. Thorn watched her eyes and felt his blood run cold. It wasn't hatred or fury. It was the calm, calculating gaze of a predator who had found its prey. The message is simple, she said. Humanity knows about Kepler 442b. We know every colony you have burned, every innocent life you have taken, every world you have conquered. We watched. We learned. We prepared. She let the words hang in the void. The Stoneborn Dominion has a choice, Elena continued. Withdraw from all human space. Release every human prisoner you hold. Never again threaten another human world. If you do this, we will consider the matter closed. Her smile then was the most terrifying thing Thorn had ever seen. If you refuse, she said softly, we will do to every Stoneborn world what we just did to your fleet. We will hunt your ships, destroy your stations, turn your colonies into craters. We will not stop until your species is extinct. Thorn's throat closed. You cannot be serious. We have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, whole worlds devoted to war production. 20 minutes ago you had 12 heavy cruisers, Elena replied. How did that work out for you? 3 weeks later, Admiral, Thorn stood before the Stoneborn High Command on the capital world of Kithara. The vast chamber was packed with the Empire's most powerful military leaders. Scales of purple, crimson, and orange flashed across the assembly. Curiosity, disbelief barely contained rage. Repeat your report, demanded Supreme Commander Ithaga, her four eyes drilling into Thorn like orbital beams. Thorn had told the story dozens of times to officers who reacted the same way, each time, with incredulity and fury. My fleet of 12 heavy cruisers engaged a single human vessel. In the Terminus Nebula, he began. Voice flat. The ship appeared to be a cargo hauler called the Meridian Dawn. It was a warship in disguise. The UES Retribution. That single vessel destroyed my fleet. General Kexfar's scales flared red with skepticism. You claim one ship destroyed 12? That's impossible. Yes, sir, Thorn said. In roughly 20 minutes using weapons and technologies unknown to us. Outrage rippled through the chamber. Some officers shouted that the humans must have had reinforcements or hidden support. Admiral Nexcon suggested cloaked ships or remote batteries. No, Thorn replied. Sensor logs confirm a single vessel operating alone. I brought the complete tactical recordings. Supreme Commander Woga activated the holodisplay. The battle replayed in miniature. The Stoneborn formation encircling what looked like a transport. Then the Retribution's sudden transformation and the unrelenting, surgical destruction of the fleet. Silence fell. Someone muttered that the footage could be fabricated. The wreckage still floats in the Terminus Nebula, Thorn said coldly. Any ship can verify the debris field. The humans left it intact as a message. When the replay ended, the chamber sat heavy with stunned quiet. Finally, Woga asked, "What did the human captain want?" "She gave me a choice to deliver," Thorne said. "They know of our attack on Kepler 442b and of many of our operations against human worlds. They studied us, learned our weaknesses, and prepared countermeasures. They offered terms: withdraw from human space, release prisoners, cease hostilities. If we refuse, they will systematically destroy our ships, stations, and colonies until our species is extinct." A roar exploded through the hall. Officers leaped to their feet, scales flashing with rage. The notion that soft humans could threaten the stone-born dominion was intolerable. "Impossible," shouted General Kixover. "We fought 17 species and conquered them all. These humans are no different." "Respectfully, they are different," Thorne answered. "They do not fight like the others. They don't always panic under pressure. They fight with precision, with a willingness to die, and they learn from every encounter." Woga studied the tactical logs again. The efficiency was undeniable. No wasted shots, no reckless sacrifice, only precise, target-by-target elimination. "How many were on that ship?" she asked. 23, Thorne said. 23 humans destroyed 12 heavy cruisers and some 4,000 crew. Murmurs spread through the chamber as the implications settled in. Strategic, military, political. The need for a new calculation was clear.